5 years had passed since the terrible day when humanity learned they were unwanted in the galaxy. Earth had transformed into something completely different. The blue planet that once looked peaceful from space now buzzed with constant activity. Like a disturbed beehive, Prime Minister Dayun stood inside the command center of Luna Base, watching through the massive viewing windows as hundreds of enormous ships prepared for departure. Each vessel was the size of a small city and packed with 50,000 humans ready to leave everything they had ever known behind. The ships looked nothing like the old rockets that first took humans to the moon. These new vessels were sleek and powerful, with hull plating that shimmered like liquid metal. Their engines glowed with blue energy that could push them faster than light itself. Technology that had seemed impossible just a few years ago was now routine. Admiral Seok Jin approached Da-un, carrying a tablet filled with departure schedules and mission reports. His weathered face showed the stress of coordinating the largest movement of people in human history, but his eyes burned with determination that had kept him working 18-hour days for months. He told Da-un that Project Exodus was ahead of schedule. The new quantum tunnel drives were performing better than anyone had hoped. They would reach their target systems in half the time the Galactic Council believed possible, while using fuel sources the aliens had never discovered. Da-un nodded as she studied the holographic display showing the positions of every human ship. The fleet stretched out from Earth like seeds being scattered by a cosmic wind. Each group of vessels headed toward different star systems that the Council had dismissed as worthless or too dangerous to colonize. The aliens had made a critical mistake in their arrogance. They assumed that because they found certain worlds unsuitable, then no one else could make them work. Humans had always been different, though. They thrived in places other species avoided and turned challenges into opportunities. Dr. Yunji, the brilliant physicist who had revolutionized human space travel, joined them at the observation deck. Her long black hair was tied back and her lab coat was wrinkled from working around the clock for weeks, but her eyes sparkled with excitement as she watched her life work finally being put to use. She explained that the quantum tunnel drives were stable across all vessels and performing beyond their wildest expectations. The technology allowed ships to fold space itself, creating shortcuts through dimensions that normal physics said should not exist. The drives were completely undetectable by Council sensors. 3i first wave of colony ships had already reached their destinations, and the reports coming back were incredible. Humans had landed on worlds covered in toxic swamps, and within months had built thriving cities with clean air and fresh water. They found barren rocks floating in space and turned them into green gardens that could feed millions. Captain Tejo, commanding the exploration vessel Indomitable, sent regular reports from the edge of known space. His ship was one of dozens pushing further into unexplored regions, looking for resources and opportunities that the Council species had overlooked in their comfortable laziness. His latest message was particularly exciting. He had discovered asteroid belts rich in rare minerals that could boost human energy production by hundreds of %. These resources had been sitting unused for millions of years, while the Council focused on their established territories and ignored the frontier regions. The aliens had grown soft and complacent in their ancient civilizations. They no longer pushed boundaries or took risks. Everything they did followed patterns established thousands of years ago. Innovation was rare because they had convinced themselves they already knew everything. Important humans were different. They had been forced to innovate or die throughout their entire history. The exile imposed by the Council had simply given them a new challenge to overcome. Every obstacle made them stronger and more determined to prove their worth in secret factories hidden throughout the solar system. Human workers and machines produced weapons that could crack planets in half, and shields that could bend light around entire fleets. The technology was advancing so rapidly that each month brought breakthroughs that made the previous month's work seem primitive. Artificial intelligence systems that could outthink the galaxy. Oldest civilizations were being installed in every human facility. These AI partners did not replace human creativity, but amplified it, allowing single humans to accomplish tasks that would require entire alien research teams. The manufacturing capabilities were the most impressive achievement of all. Automated systems could build a fully equipped colony ship in just 2 weeks, while traditional alien shipyards took years to complete similar vessels. The speed of human expansion was accelerating beyond anything the Council had imagined possible. General Min Ho sent reports from the military training facilities where human soldiers were being prepared for any eventuality. The exile had taught humanity that they could not rely on alien protection or goodwill. They needed to be strong enough to defend themselves against any threat. The soldiers trained with weapons and armor that incorporated technology centuries ahead of Council military equipment, personal energy shields, combat suits that enhanced strength and speed to superhuman levels, and weapons that could punch through the hulls of alien warships. But the most important development was not technological. It was psychological. The exile had united humanity in a way that centuries of Earth politics had failed to achieve. People from every nation and culture worked together toward the common goal of proving that the Council had made a terrible mistake. Children born after the exile grew up knowing that their species had been rejected by the galaxy. These young humans did not feel shame about this rejection. Instead, they felt angry and determined to show the aliens exactly what humanity was capable of achieving. The educational systems focused on science, engineering, and exploration. Every human child learned about the vast universe waiting beyond Council, space, and the opportunities that existed for those brave enough to claim them. The exile had created a generation of humans who saw the galaxy as something to be conquered rather than joined. Da-Un watched the last of the colony ships disappear. Into hyperspace, she felt a mixture of sadness and pride. Humanity was leaving Earth behind, but they were carrying the best of human civilization with them to new worlds that would become stepping stones to greatness. The Council had wanted to cage humanity in their home system, thinking that isolation would weaken them. Instead, the exile had freed humans from the limitations and restrictions of galactic law. They could now develop their technology and expand their territory without alien oversight or interference. Admiral Seok Jin reported that the deep space monitoring stations were detecting no Council surveillance in the regions where humans were expanding. The aliens were so confident in their quarantine that they were not even watching to see what humanity might be doing beyond their borders. This blindness would prove to be the Council's greatest weakness. They had assumed that exiled species would simply accept their fate and fade into obscurity. But humans had never been good at accepting limitations imposed by others. The exile was not an ending, but a beginning, Doctor. Yunji smiled as she reviewed the latest reports from the colony worlds. Every settlement was exceeding expectations and establishing the foundation for something far greater than anyone had imagined. The seeds of human civilization were taking root in soil that the Council had never bothered to examine. The galaxy was about to learn that sometimes the species you exile become the ones you should fear most. The huge crystal building of the Galactic Council made strange humming sounds as Ambassador Hyunwoo walked through its long hallways. His black suit felt heavy on his shoulders, and sweat dripped down his back. Even though the air was cool, the walls around him glowed with soft blue light and showed moving pictures of different alien worlds. Hyunwoo had never seen anything like this place before. It was bigger than any building on Earth, and filled with creatures he had only dreamed about. In science fiction movies, tall beings with 4 arms walked past him. Their skin looked like metal, and their eyes glowed red. A group of floating jellyfish made of pure light drifted overhead, making musical sounds as they moved. His assistant, Ji-Hai, walked beside him carrying a small recording device in her shaking hands. She wore the same black uniform as Hyunwoo, but her face was pale with worry. They had traveled so far from home to get to this place. 47 light years through space, in the fastest ship Earth had ever built. The journey took them 6 months, and during that time they practiced their speech over and over again. Hyunwoo knew every word by heart. He had memorized facts about human achievements and prepared answers for every question the aliens might ask. This was the most important day in human history, and he could not fail. As they approached the main chamber, Ji-Hai whispered to him. Her voice was so quiet, he could barely hear her above the alien sounds around them. She said the translator device was working perfectly, and all the cameras were recording. Everything that happened today would be sent back to Earth for everyone to see. The massive doors to the council chamber opened with a deep rumbling sound. The room beyond was enormous, with a ceiling so high it disappeared into darkness. Thousands of alien beings sat in curved rows around a central platform. Their different shapes and colors created a rainbow of strange life forms. Some aliens looked like giant insects with many legs clicking on the floor. Others resembled walking trees with bark-like skin and leaves growing from their heads. A few looked almost human, but with extra eyes or unusual skin colors. The variety was amazing and terrifying at the same time. In the center of it all stood the Chancellor, a towering creature with silver scales covering his entire body. He had 4 muscular arms and 6 eyes that moved independently of each other. When he spoke, his voice boomed through. Translation speakers placed throughout the room, Hyunwoo and Jihae, were led to a small platform in the middle of the chamber. All around them, alien eyes stared down like they were specimens in a laboratory. The weight of their attention felt crushing, but Hyunwoo stood straight and tried to look confident. The Chancellor raised one of his 4 arms, and instantly the thousands of alien voices fell silent. The only sound was the gentle hum of the building systems and the beating of Hyunwoo's heart, which seemed loud enough for everyone to hear. The Chancellor began to speak, and his words were translated into perfect English through the devices they wore. The translation was so good it even captured the tone of authority in his voice. He said, "The Galactic Council had been meeting for many rotations to discuss the human request for membership. Hyunwoo had prepared for this moment, but hearing it spoken aloud made his stomach twist with nervousness. Earth had sent their best diplomats, their finest scientists, and their most detailed cultural records. Everything humanity had achieved was documented in the files they submitted to the Council." A floating jellyfish creature began to glow with orange light as it spoke. Its voice sounded like music, but the words were harsh. It said humans were too aggressive and violent for the peaceful galactic community. It pointed out that humans still fought wars against each other, while most alien civilizations had achieved perfect harmony thousands of years ago. Another alien that looked like a giant lizard with sharp teeth hissed its agreement. It said human expansion was happening too fast. In just a few hundred years, humans had spread across their entire solar system, building cities on Mars and mining operations in the asteroid belt. This rapid growth worried the older civilizations. More aliens began to speak, and each one found new reasons to criticize humanity. They said humans consumed too many resources and changed their environments too drastically. They worried that human technology advanced too quickly without enough consideration for consequences. Hyunwoo listened to each criticism and felt his hope slowly draining away. These aliens had already made up their minds before the meeting even started. They saw humans as dangerous children who needed to be controlled or avoided entirely. When the Chancellor finally called for him to speak, Hyunwoo stepped forward on unsteady legs. His voice cracked slightly as he began, but he pushed through the nervousness. He talked about human achievements in art and science. He mentioned their exploration of space and their dreams of joining the galactic community. He spoke about human diversity and how different cultures on Earth had learned to work together. He explained that human conflicts were becoming less common as they learned to solve problems through cooperation rather than violence. He promised that humanity would follow galactic laws and contribute positively to the community. The aliens listened in silence, but their body language showed they were not convinced. The jellyfish creatures dimmed their lights, and the lizard beings flicked their tongues in what seemed like annoyance. Even the more human-looking aliens shook their heads or looked away. When Hyunwoo finished speaking, the Chancellor stood to his full impressive height. All 6 of his eyes focused on the human ambassador as he delivered the final verdict. The Galactic Council had voted to deny human membership in their community. But the rejection was even worse than Hyunwoo had feared. The Chancellor announced that all human ships were banned from entering Council space. Humanity was quarantined to their own solar system until they could prove they deserved to join the galactic community. The chamber erupted in sounds of approval. Clicking, chirping, humming, and other alien noises filled the air as thousands of beings celebrated the decision to exclude humanity. Jihae, dropped her recording device and it clattered on the platform floor. Security guards that looked like walking suits of armor approached to escort the humans away. Hyunwoo felt numb as the reality of failure sank in. Not only had they been rejected, but humanity was now trapped in their own solar system like prisoners, as they were led toward the exit. Hyunwoo turned back to look at the Chancellor one last time. The massive alien was already talking to other council members, probably discussing their next piece of business. Humanity had been dismissed and forgotten in the span of minutes. But something stirred deep inside Hyunwoo as he walked away. It was not despair or defeat, but something harder and more determined. The aliens thought they could cage humanity in their home system. They believed humans would simply accept this punishment and fade into obscurity. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Jae picked up her recording device and checked that it was still working. Their failure had been captured completely, but so had the contempt and arrogance of the Galactic Council. The recording would go back to Earth and show everyone exactly how they had been treated. As their ship prepared for the long journey home, Hyunwoo looked out at the alien stars and made a silent promise. Humanity had been exiled from the galactic community, but they would not remain exiled forever. The Council had just made the biggest mistake in galactic history. They had given humanity a reason to become stronger than anyone thought possible. 50 years had passed since humanity left their home system, and the galaxy had no idea what was growing in the darkness between the stars. Fleet Admiral Su Young stood on the bridge of her flagship Prometheus, watching as thousands of human warships moved through the void like predators hunting in the deep ocean. The bridge around her hummed with quiet efficiency. Officers with glowing neural implants worked at stations that responded to their thoughts as much as their touch. The technology had advanced so far that the ships practically flew themselves, leaving humans free to focus on strategy and exploration. Commander Jin Ho materialized beside her as a hologram projected from his own ship, 3 light years away. His image was so clear and detailed that he seemed to be standing right there. The quantum communication network allowed instant contact across the entire human empire, no matter how vast the distances. He reported that the Terran Commonwealth now controlled over 2,000 star systems spread across 3 spiral arms of the galaxy. The population had exploded to 500 billion humans living on worlds that the Galactic Council had never even bothered to survey. Each of these worlds told a story of human determination and ingenuity. Planets with crushing gravity had been transformed using gravity manipulation technology. Worlds with toxic atmospheres now breathed clean air thanks to atmospheric processors that could convert poison into oxygen desert. Planets had become garden worlds through terraforming machines that worked faster than natural evolution. Ocean worlds hosted floating cities that harvested energy from tidal forces and underwater thermal vents. Even the most hostile environments had been turned into thriving human colonies. The manufacturing capabilities were beyond anything the galaxy had ever seen. Automated factories the size of continents produced everything from tiny computer chips to massive space stations. The production rate was so fast that new cruiser-class warships rolled off assembly lines every 6 hours. General Haewon appeared as another hologram, this time from the surface of New Kyoto, which had become Humanity Fortress World at the galaxy edge. Her military installations were hidden beneath the planet's surface but could produce enough weapons to arm entire fleets within days. She reported that the AI-assisted production facilities were working at maximum efficiency. The artificial intelligence partners had evolved far beyond simple tools. They were now creative collaborators that could design new technologies faster than human minds could fully comprehend. Dr. Wu Jin had aged gracefully thanks to medical technology that extended human lifespans. To centuries, his laboratories produced innovations that seemed like magic even to other humans. Nano-assemblers could build entire cities overnight by rearranging matter at the atomic level. Medical pods could heal any injury and cure any disease by rebuilding damaged tissue cell by cell. Human soldiers could survive wounds that would kill any other species and recover to full strength within hours. The pods could even enhance human capabilities far beyond natural limits. Terraforming equipment could transform dead worlds into paradise planets in mere years, rather than the centuries or millennia that natural processes required. Atmospheric processors could create breathable air from the most toxic chemical mixtures. The cloaking technology was perhaps the most important achievement human ships could pass through Council space completely undetected. By sensors that the aliens considered state-of-the-art, merchant vessels regularly traveled through the heart of galactic civilization. Gathering intelligence and resources, Admiral Su Young reviewed the intelligence reports that these hidden ships provided. The Galactic Council still believed that humanity was trapped in their home system, struggling with primitive technology that barely allowed them to reach their own moon. The aliens had grown even more complacent over the decades. They saw no threats to their established order and spent their time on elaborate ceremonies and cultural events, rather than advancing their science or military capabilities. Their technology had stagnated while human innovation exploded. The Council military forces used weapons and ships that were hundreds of years old by human standards. Their energy shields could be penetrated by human weapons, and their hulls could be cut through like paper. Their fastest ships moved at speeds that human cargo vessels exceeded routinely. Captain Sung Min commanded a stealth reconnaissance vessel that had spent 5 years mapping every Council military installation and strategic resource in known space. His report showed weaknesses and vulnerabilities that could be exploited if conflict ever became necessary. The Council fleets were spread thin across thousands of systems, with most ships being used for patrol duties rather than combat readiness. Their weapons were designed for show and ceremony, rather than actual warfare. They had not fought a real battle in over 1,000 years. Human psychology had changed during the decades of exile. The rejection by the Council had created a species that was patient, calculating, and utterly determined to prove their superiority. Every human alive knew the story of their exile and carried the memory like a burning flame. Children grew up, learning advanced science and military tactics from an early age. Schools taught not just knowledge, but also the importance of human unity and the destiny that awaited their species among the stars. The exile had forged humanity into something harder and more focused. The Hidden Empire had developed its own culture that blended the best of Earth traditions with new innovations created in the depths of space. Art, music, and literature flourished in ways that reflected human experiences on thousands of different worlds. But beneath the cultural achievements lay a cold fury that had been building for 50 years. Humanity remembered every word spoken during their trial before the Council. Every insult and dismissal had been recorded and preserved. The debt would eventually be collected. Admiral Su Young walked to the main viewing screen and looked out at the vast fleet under her command. 10,000 warships, each one capable of destroying entire Council fleets, waited in the queue. Darkness for orders that might never come, or might come tomorrow. The quantum tunnel drives had been improved to the point where human fleets could cross the galaxy in days rather than years. Weapons could crack moons, and shields could deflect the energy output of stars. The industrial capacity could replace losses faster than enemies could inflict them. Dr. Wu Jin had perfected technologies that allowed humans to manipulate space and time itself. Gravity weapons could crush enemy ships from light years away. Temporal fields could slow down or speed up time in localized areas, creating tactical advantages that no enemy could counter. The Hidden Empire was ready for anything the galaxy could throw at them. They had built something that surpassed the Council in every measurable way. Population technology, military strength, industrial capacity, and territorial control all favored humanity by overwhelming margins, but Admiral Su Young was not eager for war. She had learned patience. During the long years of exile, the Council would eventually discover what humanity had become. And when that day arrived, the aliens would have to decide whether they wanted to face humans as equals or as conquered subjects. The choice would be theirs. But the outcome was no longer in doubt. Humanity had used their exile to become something that the galaxy had never seen before. They were no longer the aggressive primitive species that had been rejected decades ago. They had become the apex predators of the galaxy, and soon everyone would know it. The emergency alarm echoed through the crystal corridors of the Galactic Council headquarters for the first time in 300 years. High Chancellor Zor Andis had never heard that sound before, and it filled him with a dread that made his silver scales ripple with nervous energy. Commander Veltar of the Valtaran Exploration Fleet had vanished along with his entire squadron of 6 ships. They had been investigating strange energy readings near the galactic rim when their signals simply stopped. The silence was complete and terrifying. In the war room deep beneath the council chambers, military advisors from 12 different species gathered around a holographic display that showed the last known positions of the missing vessels. The Chronari intelligence chief, a massive reptilian being with scarred hide, spoke in worried hisses. He explained that the missing ships had been investigating reports of massive artificial structures in regions that their star charts marked as empty space. The structures appeared to be space stations, but they were larger than anything the Council had ever built, and their architecture was completely unknown. The Zephyrian delegate floated above the table, pulsing with agitated purple, light that indicated extreme distress. Her ethereal form flickered as she transmitted data directly into the Council computer systems. The energy readings from the mysterious structures were beyond anything in their databases. Admiral Torkesh of the Council Defense Fleet studied the tactical displays with growing alarm. His 4 eyes moved independently as he processed information from multiple screens simultaneously. The power signatures they were detecting could only come from reactors. That exceeded Council technology by impossible margins. A junior aide rushed into the room, carrying a data crystal that glowed with urgent red light. The young Altarian female trembled as she approached the Chancellor, her butterfly wings fluttering. With barely controlled panic, she had never been in the presence of so many high-ranking officials. She reported that long-range sensor arrays had finally identified the source of the mysterious structures. The scans had taken weeks to process, because the technology was so advanced that their computers could barely interpret the data. But the results were undeniable. The structures were human in origin. The war room fell completely silent as every being present tried to process this impossible information. Humans were supposed to be quarantined in their home system, struggling with primitive technology that barely allowed interplanetary travel. Chancellor Zor Andis felt his world shifting beneath him as the implications became clear. His predecessor had exiled humanity 75 years ago, believing that isolation would teach them humility and force them to abandon their aggressive expansion. The holographic display updated to show the full scope of what their deep space sensors had discovered: thousands of human settlements dotted regions that the Council had never explored. Massive fleets moved between star systems using technology that made Council vessels look like ancient relics. Most shocking were the megastructures that defied everything the Council thought they knew about engineering. Ring worlds, large enough to house billions of people, orbited distant stars. Dyson spheres captured the entire energy output of stellar bodies to power civilizations beyond. Imagination space habitats the size of moons drifted through the void, supporting populations that exceeded the total number of beings in Council space. The scale was so vast that it seemed impossible until the sensor data confirmed every detail. With mathematical precision, Admiral Torkesh activated additional scanning protocols, hoping to find some error in the readings. But each new scan only confirmed the terrifying reality. Human technology had advanced beyond anything the galaxy had seen. Their ships used propulsion systems that folded space itself. The weapons signatures were equally disturbing. Energy weapons that could crack planets, defensive shields that could deflect the output of entire stars, manufacturing capabilities that could build fleets faster than the Council could count them. The humans had become something unprecedented. Intelligence reports from the outer sectors painted an even more alarming picture. Human ships had been moving through Council space for decades, completely undetected by sensors that were supposed to be state-of-the-art. Their cloaking technology was centuries ahead of Council capabilities. Trade records showed that human merchants had been operating in Council markets for years, selling goods and resources while gathering intelligence about every aspect of galactic civilization. They knew everything about Council, military capabilities, economic systems, and political structures. The Zephyrian delegate accessed the central databases and began cross-referencing energy signatures with historical data. Her findings sent waves of fear through every being in the room. Human ships had been present during major Council events for the past 20 years. They had attended diplomatic ceremonies, monitored military exercises, and observed the construction of new facilities. The humans had been watching and learning, while the Council remained completely oblivious to their presence. The surveillance had been total and invisible. Dr. Yexara, the Council chief scientist, materialized as a hologram from her laboratory on the capital world. Her crystalline form sparkled with agitation as she delivered her preliminary analysis of the human technology. The advancement rate was impossible, by all known scientific principles. She explained that human innovation appeared to be accelerating rather than following normal development curves. Most species reached technological plateaus where advancement slowed, but humans seemed to be breaking through barriers that other civilizations considered permanent. The medical technology alone represented breakthroughs that the Council had believed were theoretically impossible. Humans appeared to have conquered death itself with life extension, treatments that could preserve individuals for centuries while maintaining peak physical and mental capabilities. Their terraforming abilities allowed them to transform any world into a paradise within years, rather than the millennia that natural processes required. Atmospheric processors could create breathable environments from the most hostile chemical combinations. Most disturbing was evidence of human genetic and cybernetic enhancement, programs that pushed their species beyond natural limitations, creating individuals with capabilities that exceeded any known biological form. The enhanced humans were stronger, faster, and more intelligent than baseline members of their species. Chancellor Zor Andis realized that every assumption the Council had made about humanity was wrong. They were not the primitive, aggressive species that had been rejected decades ago. They had become something that transcended the limitations of normal civilization. The exile that was supposed to humble humanity had instead freed them from the restrictions and oversight that limited other species. They had been able to develop their technology and expand their territory without interference or regulation. Admiral Torkesh presented his military assessment, and the numbers were terrifying. Human fleet strength exceeded the combined forces of the entire Galactic Council by margins that made resistance seem futile. Their weapons could destroy Council ships before they even detected the attack. The industrial capacity was equally overwhelming. Human manufacturing systems could replace their entire military force faster than the Council could inflict damage. The war would be over before it truly began if conflict became unavoidable. As the meeting continued, each new revelation painted a more desperate picture. The species that the Council had dismissed as unworthy had quietly become the dominant power in the galaxy, while their supposed superiors stagnated in comfortable ignorance. The question was no longer whether humans deserved membership in the galactic community. The question was whether the Council would survive the awakening of the empire they had created through their arrogance and fear. Outside the war room, emergency broadcasts were being prepared for transmission to every Council world. The galaxy was about to learn that the balance of power had shifted in ways that no one had imagined possible. The age of Council supremacy was ending, and the age of human dominance was about to begin. The human fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of Council territory, like a force of nature that had been building power for decades. Admiral Su Young stood on the command bridge of the flagship Sovereignty, watching as 10,000 vessels arranged themselves into perfect formation behind her. Each ship in the massive fleet represented the pinnacle of human engineering and determination. The hulls gleamed with armor that could deflect stellar radiation, and the engines pulsed with energy that bent space itself around them. The sight was both beautiful and terrifying. Admiral Su Young had lived through the entire exile period, thanks to life extension technology that kept her mind sharp and her body strong. She remembered the day humanity was rejected by the Council, and had spent 75 years preparing for this moment. Her uniform bore insignia that represented not just her military rank, but her role as spokesperson for 500 billion humans spread across 2,000 worlds. Every decision she made today would echo through history and determine the future of galactic civilization. The communications officer, a young man with neural implants that glowed softly blue, reported that Council defense fleets were scrambling to respond. Their ships were moving into defensive positions, but their movement seemed slow and clumsy compared to human vessels. Admiral Su Young ordered the fleet to maintain position just outside Council space. She wanted to make it clear that this was not an invasion but a diplomatic mission backed by overwhelming force. The humans had come to negotiate, not to conquer. She opened a direct communication channel to the Galactic Council headquarters. Her image would appear on screens throughout Council space, showing the galaxy what humanity had become during their long exile. The moment had arrived to collect what was owed. Chancellor Zor Andis appeared on the main view screen, his silver scales rippling with fear and confusion. His 6 eyes darted around as if looking for escape routes or hidden threats. He began to speak, but his voice cracked with nervousness. He accused the humans of committing an unprovoked act of aggression by bringing such a massive fleet to Council borders. His words sounded hollow and desperate as he tried to maintain some illusion of authority in the face of obvious human superiority. Admiral Su Young cut him off with a gesture that conveyed both respect and quiet menace. She introduced herself as the representative of the Terran Commonwealth, speaking for humanity scattered across the galaxy. Their exile had ended, and the time for reckoning had come. President Min Seo joined the transmission from her office on New Terra, the capital world of human space. Her presence commanded respect throughout the Commonwealth, and now she would speak for her entire species to the galaxy that had scorned them. She appeared calm and composed, despite the historical magnitude of the moment. Her words carried the weight of 75 years of human achievement, and the quiet confidence of a leader who knew her. People had already won. President Min Seo reminded the Council of the day they had exiled humanity for being too aggressive, too expansionist, and too dangerous for their peaceful galaxy. She acknowledged that the aliens had been right about humans being dangerous, but not in the way they had imagined. The holographic display showed the true scope of human achievement: cities that housed billions of people in comfort and prosperity, ships that could travel between galaxies, technologies that had eliminated poverty, disease, and death itself from human civilization. Worlds that the Council had deemed uninhabitable now bloomed with life thanks to human ingenuity. Toxic swamps had become garden paradises. Barren rocks had been transformed into agricultural centers that could feed entire star systems. The humans had not done this to spite the Council, but because exile had challenged them to become worthy of the stars. They had turned rejection into motivation and isolation into an opportunity for unlimited growth. President Min Seo explained that humans had eliminated the problems that had once made them seem unfit for galactic society. War, poverty, and environmental destruction were things of the past. Human civilization had achieved harmony through strength rather than stagnation. Admiral Su Young added her own perspective as someone who had witnessed the entire transformation. The exile had taught humanity patience and strategic thinking. They had learned to plan for centuries rather than years, and to build for permanence rather than convenience. The fleet around her represented just a fraction of human military capability. Thousands more vessels waited in the void between galaxies, ready to respond if the Council chose confrontation over cooperation. The choice was entirely up to the aliens, Chancellor. Zor Andis found his voice again and asked the question that everyone in Council space was thinking: what did humanity want from the galaxy that had rejected them? The answer would determine whether peace or war followed this historic encounter. Admiral Su Young smiled, but her expression was not cruel or vindictive. Instead, it carried the sadness of someone who had seen too much unnecessary conflict. She explained that humans wanted recognition of their sovereignty over the territories they had claimed. They wanted trade agreements that would benefit both human and alien civilizations. They wanted to share their medical and technological advances with species that had once considered them primitive. The exile had taught them that the galaxy was big enough for everyone. Most importantly, they wanted the Council to understand that diversity of thought and approach strengthened civilizations rather than weakening them. The alien obsession with conformity and stagnation had nearly cost them their position as galactic leaders. President Min Seo addressed the deeper issue that had led to human exile. The Council feared species that thought differently and challenged established norms. But innovation required exactly those qualities that made the aliens uncomfortable. She pointed out that human achievements during their exile proved that different approaches to civilization could produce remarkable results. The Council insistence on slow, careful development had left them vulnerable to more dynamic societies. Chancellor, Zorandis asked what would happen if the Council refused to accept human demands. The question hung in the air like a challenge that everyone knew the answer to, but no one wanted to speak aloud. Admiral Su Young's response was diplomatic, but firm. The galaxy had grown beyond the Council ability to contain or control human expansion, would continue regardless of alien approval. The only question was whether it would happen through cooperation or conflict. The choice belonged to the Council. They could accept humanity as equals and benefit from human innovations, or they could resist and discover exactly what 75 years of exile had taught the species they had rejected. President Mincio made the final point that sealed humanity. Fate as the galaxy knew dominant power. The exile had not weakened humans or taught them humility. Instead, it had freed them from limitations and allowed them to reach their full potential. The age of human exile was over. The age of human supremacy had begun not through conquest but through the overwhelming proof that some species grow strongest when forced to grow alone. The Council would now learn to live in a galaxy where humans set the rules. As the transmission ended, the human fleet maintained its perfect formation, waiting for the Council response. The answer would determine whether the transition of power happened peacefully or through demonstrations of force that would leave no doubt about the new galactic order. The galaxy would never be the same.